Take it away.
Great. So, hi, everybody. My name is State Senator Scott Surovell. I represent 36th Senate District. Appreciate everybody getting on here to join us for our myself and Delegate Cole and Delegate King for our annual General Assembly town hall meeting. A little bit different format this year in light of the circumstances, but hopefully it'll enhance our turnout and our participation. So I'm going to introduce myself really quick, then I'll let Delegate Cole and Delegate King introduce themselves. Then we'll go back and we'll go through each of our legislative agendas, and then we'll take your questions. So again, my name is Scott Surovell. I'm the state senator for the 36th Senate District. I live in the Mount Vernon part of Fairfax County. My district includes probably about 80 or 90,000 people in southern and eastern Fairfax County, about 110,000 people in eastern Prince William County, and probably about 25,000 people in northern Stafford County. Basically, everybody who lives north of Garrisonville Road out to North Stafford High School, and then the Widewater Peninsula for those of you in Stafford County. I've served in the state Senate now for 5 years, been representing Stafford County since 2016. And I served in the Virginia House of Delegates for 6 years before that, representing the 44th Delegate District in Fairfax County. But it's a pleasure to be here to let you know what we're all doing and to take your questions. And that's why I'm really here, to find out what you all think. And I look forward to hearing from you. I'm going to turn over now to Delegate Josh Cole.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Delegate Josh Cole, and I represent the 28th House District, which includes the city of Fredericksburg and Stafford County. I serve on the House Education Committee, Public Safety Committee, and Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resources. And I'm excited to be here. This is my first term, and I'm excited to talk to you about some of our agendas today.
Good morning. And Delegate Cole is also the king of backgrounds and borders and filters, as you can see with his amazing graphics. I'm Candy Munden King, Delegate Candy Munden King. I'm still getting used to that. It's been about 3 weeks. And I serve the 2nd District, which is Prince William and Stafford County. This year, I am serving on the Public Safety, Privileges and Elections and Finance Committees in the House of Delegates. And I will kick it back over to Senator Surovell.
Whoops, I had it muted there. So I forgot to mention my committees. First of all, I'm the vice chairman of the Senate Democratic Caucus. I also serve on the Commerce and Labor Committee, the Judiciary Committee, Privileges and Elections Committee, the Transportation Committee, and the Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee. So in the Senate, we're a little bit smaller, and so we have to serve on a few more committees. There's only 40 of us, not 100 delegates. And so we all have to do a little bit more work on my side, on the a little more committee work. So let me go through some of the bills that I'm carrying this session, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some bigger stuff going on, and then we'll each of us, I guess, will talk what we're doing. So first of all, we are in a short session. In the General Assembly, we have a long session and a short session, and in the even year, we do a 60-day session. In the odd year, where we are right now, we do a 46-day session. Right now, we're right around day 22 or 23. We normally do what we call, or actually around day 20, I guess. We normally do what's called crossover, which is when we stop working on bills in our own chamber and work on bills from the other chamber, starting around day 28. This year, we're moving it up to about day 23, which will be Friday. So we're approaching the halfway point of session right now. The short session, we typically take on smaller issues, not always, but typically take on smaller issues because we have less time. We also don't do our budget work is less. In the long session, we do our big budget, a 2-year budget. In the short session, we come back and we make adjustments. So the budgeting this year is very difficult because the revenue is kind of unpredictable, partially mainly because of the pandemic, I guess, and you know, activity is very unpredictable. We're kind of in an unprecedented time, but also the federal government right now is debating a $2 trillion stimulus package, of which a big chunk will go back to the states with strings attached. And everybody's trying to figure out exactly how much money might come and what strings might be attached. And we have to be careful about spending money that we might have to spend in a different way if the federal government gives us money to spend. And so the money committees are right now trying to work through some of those issues and plan for those contingencies. My guess is we might not, depending on how things go at the federal level and the timing of it all, that that might create some issues for us trying to plan our budget. But our revenues do look a lot better than I think anybody expected to. Virginia's been one of the states that has been one of the most fortunate states in terms of economic activity due to the pandemic. And we've been very lucky. We haven't had nearly as much dislocation as other areas. I know everybody's number one focus is getting everybody vaccinated, getting our economy and our schools back online. I was talking to the governor's chief of staff last night. I know there's been a lot of data points out there, but Virginia is moving up in the vaccination numbers very rapidly. In fact, I believe what he told me is that right now we're in the top 10 in terms of states, in terms of shots in arms on a per capita level, I think. And I think we're going to be seeing some exciting data coming out pretty soon to show that we're actually doing pretty well, notwithstanding what has been out in the media so far. I know I would like to see the schools open as soon as possible. I think as soon as all of our school personnel are vaccinated, it's my view. I don't know about Delegate King or Delegate Cole, but I think as soon as all of our school personnel are vaccinated, we should families should have the option of sending their kids back. But we'll see. There's a couple different bills and things pending about that. Another big thing we're working on is marijuana legalization. I've now spent, I think, over 12 hours in committee talking about marijuana. It's not even my bill. I served on a rehabilitation and social services subcommittee on marijuana. We heard that in 2 full subcommittee hearings that took 8 hours, a full committee hearing that took 2 hours. And I was in a judicial subcommittee for 2 hours on Thursday and 4 hours yesterday talking about marijuana. In the meeting we had yesterday, we actually accelerated the removal of criminal statutes to July 1 of this year. At least that's what we recommended in our committee, so that we would delete the possession offense starting July 1 of this year. And then to do that, you have to add other offenses like juvenile possession and underage possession between 18 and 21. You have to prohibit school bus possession, school grounds possession, taking it to a prison, all that kind of stuff. And we also validated the automatic expungement process for marijuana convictions, but that'll be about 4 years out. But we also put some provisions in to allow people to petition for an expungement early for marijuana convictions. And then with regard to legalization, we actually put a reenactment clause on the entire bill, which would basically mean that marijuana legalization would not become law until a future legislature voted to do it. And at least there's a feeling in my chamber that this issue is way too big and complicated for us to bang out in the remaining time we have left in session. It is extraordinarily complex, and I'm happy to have further discussion about that. There's a whole social equity piece that we have to talk about, which is very hard to do correctly to withstand court challenge. There's a lot of issues about the interplay between legal hemp growing, medical marijuana, and retail marijuana. There's a lot of issues about how you allow people to grow marijuana at home legally, and exactly how you allow that, where you don't create problems and neighbors fighting with each other and people calling the police on their neighbors and all that. There's a lot of issues. The bill is 13,000 lines long. It's the biggest bill I've ever seen besides a budget. So anyways, that's what's going on with the budget. There's some voting stuff going on, some really exciting voting changes to lock in some of the things we just did, confirming our drop box system, our absentee curing system. We have a constitutional right to vote, where everybody would be constitutionally entitled to the right to vote instead of our existing Jim Crow language, which is in our Constitution, which dates back to the Constitution of 1904. So that's some of the stuff going on sort of on a macro level that in terms of some of the bills I'm carrying. Number one, I have a bill to authorize class action lawsuits in Virginia. We're one of only 2 states in America that don't allow class actions. It's us in Mississippi. That's it. Every other state in the federal system has had class action lawsuits for decades, and we don't. It really tends to hurt, I think, lower income folks who tend to get stolen from in very small dollar amounts. It gives consumers the ability to fight things like predatory lending or large landlords or things like that. So I have that bill coming through. Passed the Senate last year, died in the House. I'm hopeful it'll pass this year. I have a bill to raise our Virginia auto insurance minimum policy from $25,000 to $50,000. That minimum number has not changed since I was 4 years old in 1975. It's about time we changed it and caught up with the rest of the world, so that if you're hurt, if you're injured in a car accident, the person who hit you will have enough insurance to pay your medical bills. I have a bill to allow local governments to require bidders to disclose their arbitration practices. A lot of businesses hide sexual discrimination, racial discrimination, and consumer lawsuits using mandatory arbitration because you can't. It ends up not being filed in courts. It tends to be done in these private arbitration systems where you can't see it. So there's no sunshine on crappy business practices. And my bill would require bidders on public contracts to disclose those things. I have a really big bill on the reform of our expungement policy. I know in the House of Delegates, the majority leader, Charnel Herring, has a different proposal. It's similar to mine. It's smaller than mine. Mine's a lot bigger. Hers is a lot smaller. We're probably gonna have to take the two and put them together somehow. But Virginia has some of the most restrictive expungement policies in America. In 41 other states, if you have a misdemeanor conviction, there's ways to get that sealed. In 36 other states, felony convictions can be sealed. In Virginia, you can't do any of that. So we're way behind everybody. In addition to that, I have a bill that we're actually discussing on Monday to create or to confirm, I guess, civil liability for law enforcement officers who violate the rules we've established with regard to the use of force. I have a bill to enhance Fairfax County's ability to pay for underground utilities. Doesn't really relate to Stafford. I'm not going to talk about that. But then I've got another bill about health insurance, which is a similar bill in the House, just got buried in committee, but I made some tweaks to mine, which I think might make it survive. But it basically requires every health insurance company to put in their contracts, every health insurance company to put in a contract with every provider that they will not discriminate against patients on race, sex, sexual orientation, but also their status as a litigant. There are some doctors who basically refuse to see people because they've been in car accidents or for other reasons. And from my perspective, if you have insurance, a doctor ought to be required to see you. That's part of the deal they make when they agree to accept insurance from insurance companies. And so that bill, I think, will be coming through from the Senate. Then I have a series of budget amendments. In terms of Stafford County, the one that matters the most is I have a $29 million amendment to try and build out phase 2 and 3 of Whitewater State Park. Whitewater State Park is a wonderful new asset. It's the only public water access in Stafford County. We've built out phase 1, but phases 2 and 3, which involve cabins and campgrounds, has not been completed yet or funded. I also have a bill to require the Department of Environment, budget amendment to require the Department of Environmental Quality to build a groundwater monitoring well somewhere north of Fredericksburg. If most people probably don't realize this, but if you live east of I-95, you sit on top of the Potomac Aquifer, which is it runs all the way from New Jersey to Georgia, but it's losing water and it's dropping fast. And those of us who are up against I-95, where it starts, it's the thinnest part of the aquifer. It's the most subject to being depleted. And there's no monitoring wells that are north of Fredericksburg. And so people who depend on groundwater for their water, who live up where we are really specifically acutely at risk for their well drying out. And so we need data to make sure we're taking the right steps to make sure we protect that resource up here. The state's really only monitoring it on the Northern Neck, the Middle Peninsula, and out towards Virginia Beach and stuff. We need more monitoring up our way. So that's another budget amendment I have. So anyways, that's some of the stuff I'm doing. But I'm really here to take your questions. I'm going to turn over now, I guess, to next in seniority, Delegate Josh Cole. He can tell you what he's doing.
Thank you, Senator. So quite a few of those things that the Senator was talking about, I'm actually already signed on as co-patron or supporting on the House side. So I'm really excited about everything that's coming through. I'll talk about a few of the bills that we have, and then I'll move over to budget amendments that I submitted. A couple of things that have hit the news already. I put in a bill to rename Jefferson Davis Highway to Emancipation Highway. This is actually only going to affect a small amount of counties. Stafford County, in our discussion, they asked me to do this back over the summer with the special session. And we had to push the bill to January. And when we did that, I shared with them back in the first week of December that we were going to move forward with Loving Memorial Highway. I guess that didn't sit well with them. So they voted after asking me to do it on December the 15th to rename it Richmond Highway. So one of the reasons we also put a delayed enactment on HB 2075 Normally when you pass a bill during the session, it doesn't go into effect until July. This bill will not go into effect until January 1st of 2022 to allow the counties like Prince William County and Stafford County, who have already voted to rename to Richmond Highway, allow them the time to actually finish out their process. So Emancipation Highway will most likely be named in the city of Fredericksburg, down in Chesterfield County in the Petersburg area. And that's all that will most likely will see Emancipation Highway. The rest of them have already changed the name, or by January 1st, 2022, will have the name change. We also have a couple of bills that have already passed out of the House and have headed over to the Senate. HB 1905 is basically financial literacy that came at the request of the governor. So those who are in high school and middle school will now be required, not optional, but required to learn the differences between job types. So full-time job, gig jobs, 1099 jobs, different things like that. So make sure they're prepared and know what the benefits are included. Once they graduate and go into the workforce, they know what type of jobs they're applying for and what it entails. We also have a boring bill, HB 2294, basically just brings us into federal regulation with reading vehicle odometers and the requirements for vehicle registration. That's already passed out the House and headed over to the Senate as well. We also have one of the big bills that has been gaining a lot of attention recently. It's HB 1910, which would create a regional transportation, basically we call it a regional transportation improvement committee. And this was something that I campaigned really big on when I was running for the House of Delegates, of creating a regional transportation authority, basically a taxing authority that would keep our money locally in the Fredericksburg region. So initially it started off with allowing communities throughout the Commonwealth to create RTAs. After dealing with some conversations with some stakeholders, with some delegates who have been in the House longer than me, who helped create the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, who helped create the Richmond Transportation Authority, and who helped create the I-81 project, they came up with some other ideas that would lead us to getting to an RTA in what we call Planning District 16. Planning District 16 is city of Fredericksburg, Stafford County, Spotsylvania, King George, and Caroline. And so basically what the bill does, it would create a regional transportation authority to determine strategies to reduce traffic congestion, increase transit access, and improve environmental quality, and expand multimodal transit within Planet District 16. And it's a stepping stone to establishing an RTA. And so, you know, a lot of people have been asking the question, well, we have FAMPO and we have GWRT. Why do we need this? Well, look at our traffic. If you can tell our traffic hasn't improved, this is why we need this. It brings all the major players at the table. So both local, regional, and state elected officials to come in to talk about the issue. And it forces them to plan ahead for transportation and making sure that we can do better. And you know, some people are saying, well, we don't really need this. Well, if you look at the traffic and what we have, the last reports have come out in the last 2 years, we literally have the worst traffic in America, from Washington, D.C. to Fredericksburg. And many of the players who have been you know, on the ground for years, a lot of them have been the ones that caused a lot of this. So we need to say, hey, it's time to come to sit at the table. We need to fix the issue, and we can do better. So I'm really excited about that. I think we can get some great things done with that. And as it relates to budget amendments, I have some great things. I'm carrying all the budget amendments for the University of Mary Washington to help with creating the, fixing up the Fine Arts Center. I'm really excited about that. If anyone has been down there that needs some serious renovation, and I'm excited to carry that budget amendment that will help for that. We also want to create that Fredericksburg Pipeline. A lot of these budget amendments we got into the budget last year, but because of COVID, some of them have been taken out. And so we're just trying to make sure that those costs are balanced. And so that Fredericksburg Pipeline is basically a way for students in the Fredericksburg area to get into UMW and then find a job after they're finished as well. We also have a lot of issues in the Stafford County area on Brook Road. Brook Road is flooding. It used to be after heavy rains it would flood, but now every time it rains, it floods. And so the neighbors down there have created a makeshift walking path to get from one area to the other, and a small commuter lot when it rains. And it's a shame that the people have to do something when the government's not doing its job. And so I'm excited to carry a budget amendment that would create an emergency route, would be a gravel path to get to one end to the other end when it rains. And that's just the starting point. That's just what we want to put in the budget to make sure that we can solve something as soon as possible. But then later down the road, we still have to solve the issue. And hey, the bill I have in for the Regional Transportation Improvement Committee will help make those plans for that. And so I'm really excited that we're able to get that through. A lot of people on Brook Road are suffering, and we want to make sure they have an emergency route to get out. And then we also have funding for our regional criminal justice academies, for our police academies. Again, because of COVID, a lot of the budgeting was cut. And so we just want to restore some of that funding to make sure that our regional criminal justice academies get the training they need so they can continue to train and recruit and do what they have to do as it relates to training police officers. So that's what I have, and I'm excited about that. I'll pass it over to Delegate Candy King.
Thank you so much. So I'm glad you mentioned those budget amendments, because I have none, because those deadlines were prior to me officially becoming a member. But I'm excited to champion and support the budget amendments of Delegate Cole as well as Senator Surovell. In terms of legislation, I am heavily focused on COVID-19 recovery. I believe that there's an opportunity. So I'm supporting colleagues in bills that would require PPE, things that would expand access to telehealth and medicine. You know, as a mother of a child with special needs, telehealth has been extremely helpful during the pandemic. And I think that is something that we can continue to use as a resource for families, as well as HB 1963, which would require biennial review of local health department funding. Um, I have been able to introduce several pieces of legislation. They focused on a couple of areas. In education, I've introduced legislation that would require the State Department of Education to update its eligibility worksheets and the tools that are used for IEP, individualized education plans for our special needs students. This is something I spoke about extensively when I campaigned and ran for this office. Our special education students are hurting in the pandemic, and until we can safely reopen schools, we really should be doing all that we can to prepare to reopen strong and provide the most current resources to our special needs students. I also have 3 bills that focus on small businesses. What is so unique about the second district is that up and down Route 1, we see all of these tremendous small businesses. So I've introduced legislation that will help the Commonwealth better serve small businesses. I have one bill that would require the Virginia Small Business Financing Authority to report each year the unused funds. This is important for transparency's sake, and also to help us understand what are we not providing to small businesses. Each year, the Financing Authority has about $28 million of unused grant and loans. So this is just an opportunity to, one, have transparency, and then secondly, to start to say, okay, how can we get these loans to the businesses that need them, especially as we recover from the COVID pandemic. The second one creates a process for small women and minority-owned businesses to appeal when they are denied certification. There are so many opportunities and tools and resources for small women and minority-owned businesses, and I believe this will be another tool to help those who have not received an approval or designation as a SWAM business. And then the third would require the Commonwealth to proactively proactively work with small businesses when they are in financial constraints. And so this would allow us to proactively reach out to businesses and offer them support in terms of reduced interest rates or other things that are out there, but just connecting people with them. And then I have legislation with something that is near and dear to my heart because we see it in the news all the time: human trafficking. Yes, we are in the middle of a pandemic, but human trafficking has not stopped in our area. So I've introduced legislation that would separate the code for the victims of human trafficking, the survivors, and those who perpetrate the crimes. This will allow those victims of human trafficking better access to that expungement that Senator Surovell spoke about. So I'm also joining a colleague in a bill that would help Virginia create a pathway for expungement for those victims of human trafficking so that they can have better access to restarting their lives. And as it relates to Stafford County in particular, I had a great meeting with leadership in Stafford County, and we talked about ways that I can be supportive and that I'm advocating for Stafford County and those budget amendments that Delegate Cole spoke about, as well as an ongoing conversation about the excellent day schools that we have for special needs students in Stafford County, how we can increase support for those public day school options, as well as, using that as an example for the state, because Stafford County has done such a tremendous, tremendous job. And then the final thing, which is again, something I feel is very important: increasing access to the ballot box. We have had tremendously successful elections in Virginia where we've had a lot of participation, and I want to continue that. So I'm supporting the Virginia Voting Rights Act, which will put into place some things that will keep the progress going in terms of making sure that people have less barriers to voting and more access. And that is it for me. I look forward to taking questions. I'll kick it back to Senator Surovell, who's our MC, my headphone partner.
Great. Thank you, Candy. I love the gamer headset, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have Candy working with us in the Stafford delegation. It's been a real pleasure, and she brings a lot of advocacy skills and personal strengths that are going to be huge for her constituents. So I guess what we'll do here is, if you're on Zoom, you can post up your questions over in the corner, raise your hand, and if you're on Facebook, post your questions in the Facebook chat, and then I guess Philip, my chief of staff, is going to go through and pluck out the questions for us and read them to us. So Philip, what do we got?
Yep, we've got a whole team of folks scanning the Facebook. Aaron and
okay.
are also helping out with that, polling questions. So first up from Kevin Williams, he has a question about the governor's disparity study. How can we as minority business owners engage in participating proactively in legislation that crafted that would put action in place to bring the level of procurement playing field more level, to make the government procurement playing field more level, and provide more access with opportunities to win work? This is sort of federal government, but it might relate to state procurement as well.
Sure. And I believe the governor and Delegate Jawan Ward out of Newport News actually has legislation. I'm happy to share that. It was great news to sort of wake up to. There is legislation to increase access for small women and minority-owned businesses to state procurement. And I think that's just one step. One thing I can tell you, moving from the citizen side to the elected side, is that this governor and administration is committed to increasing access. So I can share that legislation, or I think someone may have shared it in the chat, but this administration is definitely committed to increasing access. And I would encourage you all to take a look at the House bill that relates specifically to this issue.
Candy, actually, what I put up in the chat was, last session we passed a bill creating the Virginia Minority Business Commission. And before that, we didn't really have a an entity that met when we were outside of session to vet policies relating to the development of minority business. And we just created that. Locally, Delegate Luke Torian serves on that. He's a state delegate just north of Stafford there in Prince William County. But he has a lot of people that go to his church from Stafford. I've discovered that. But that entity is really focused on that issue. And another big piece is what we do about marijuana legalization. And I know that there's no way we're going to pass legalization without having a specific and deliberate requirement that we focus on building capital and wealth in communities that have historically been hurt the most by our existing policies. And so that'll be, I think, the first time in Virginia that we do something like that. I had actually hoped that we were going to do something similar on the casino bill, that we have some minority ownership requirements, but that didn't make it in. But there's no way marijuana legalization is passing without that. And so I think you're going to see requirements that a lot of the retail establishments, the farmers, the wholesalers have companies involved that have minority participation, so we can start to build more wealth and capital in those communities. So that's another thing I know we're working on. But again, as I said earlier, I think marijuana is probably going to get put off till next session. That's my guess right now. Who knows? Maybe I'll be wrong, but that's what I think. Josh, you got anything? I'm gonna move on. No? All right, Philip, what's next?
All right, next we've got a question from Janine Deno. Ms. Deno, I'm going to invite you to unmute yourself if you'd like to. If not, I will go ahead and read it. Okay, I'll go ahead and read it. She says that she is a constituent of Delegate Cole. She would like to ask for the three of you to consider supporting Budget Amendment 340 pound 1H and the budget item 340S, which is to develop and fund dementia care management. This would be helping and support the thousands of Alzheimer families in Virginia.
Great. I haven't seen that budget amendment. Of course, there's hundreds of budget amendments, but I know, Philip, can we make sure we go look at that and see what we can do to make that happen? I don't know if that's on the House side or the Senate side or both sides, but go ahead.
I believe that's on the House side. I will also take a look at that. I will tell you there are a number of pieces of legislation and budget amendments this year focused on caregiving. And I thank you, Janine, for calling out the dementia and Alzheimer's caregivers specifically. So I will definitely take a look. And even though I'm not your delegate, I won't try to steal you from Delegate Cole, but I'm happy to have you follow up with us as well on this.
Yeah, I sent a response to Janine in the chat, just saying, with someone who has a grandmother with dementia right now and our family both taking care of her, that is a big concern of mine. Now, I'm not on appropriations, but I can definitely encourage my colleagues who are on the committee to support that. And once it comes out of the appropriations process, I definitely would vote in favor of it once it hits the budget bill.
Okay. What do we got next, Philip?
Great. Next, we're going to go to a Facebook question from Caitlin Page. She asks, actually two questions. First, would you consider introducing a bill to ban single-use plastics in Virginia? Might be for next year. And further, would you consider introducing a bill to eliminate state income taxes for nurses and doctors?
Good news, bad news, Caitlin. Number one is I serve in the State Water Commission, and the Water Commission right now is focused on single-use plastics and microplastics. That's our chairman, Delegate David Bulova, is our water guru, and it's a big issue for him, and I know it's something that we're focused on. We actually got a big presentation about single-use plastics in our last meeting before session, and it's going to be something we talk about over the next 12 months. And personally, I'm very interested in it. I clean up a creek every year in my district called Little Hunting Creek. And when I go out there, once we get all the bottles and cans and shopping carts, literally shopping carts out of the creek, I can still see little tiny pieces of plastic there in the water floating around. And so, and obviously lots of plastic bags, and we take out lots of plastic food containers and things. I mean, it's just, there's no question. I think we need to look at that more carefully and consider using things like paper and products that break down. So I'm definitely interested in it. It's a hard thing to implement, but so we're looking at it carefully. As to the income tax piece, I can't support exempting people from the income tax like that. I mean, I know our doctors and nurses have been on the front lines and sacrificing a lot to serve us every day, and as they, in this pandemic. But carving out specific categories of people from the income tax is very complicated. There's a lot of different kinds of healthcare providers besides doctors and nurses. I mean, respiratory therapists are some of the people that are most at risk in our hospitals right now, given what they have to do with COVID. But the fiscal impact of that would be extraordinary. And in Virginia, our services are already extraordinarily underfunded, I think. And if anything, I think we need more revenue sources instead of less. Our Medicaid system's way underfunded. Our higher education system is paying half the cost of a college education as compared to when I was a student at James Madison University. We haven't made nearly the investments we need to make in affordable housing. And there's a lot of things that I think we need to do a better job of focusing resources on, and I think we need a big tax overhaul myself. And I know that the House Finance Chairman Vivian Watts is talking about doing that next session, not this session, but next session. But I think that's probably the direction that we need to go. And Josh and Candy, I don't know if you want to share your views on either of those things, but that's mine.
Sure. I definitely, concur on the tax issue. I serve on the finance committee in the House, and I was aware as a citizen, but I'm really getting deeper into how antiquated our tax system is. And some of these things predate me, and I'm always for a comprehensive overhaul. I think we do have to find ways to honor the sacrifices of our frontline workers, but not to the detriment of our overall budget. In terms of the single-use plastic, we have a number of pieces of legislation in the House, including one, I believe, by well, you know what? I won't say the wrong name, but I have a colleague who has introduced a bill specifically related to styrofoam use and helping businesses move away from the more toxic pieces. There are a number of things regarding plastic. And Caitlin, I would love to follow up because I know you live in my district. I would love to follow up with you on some specific measures we can take to make Virginia more progressive as it relates to single-use plastics as well as our environment overall.
Yeah, on both of those issues, on the single-use plastic, of course, being as environmentally conscious as we are, we do have to make some moves, whatever we're figuring out to do. And so, yes, I did vote in favor. I'm on the Agricultural Committee, and the styrofoam bill came before us. I did vote in favor of that. And going back to the income tax, I carried a bill last year that would have stopped I believe it was income tax for retired military and for veterans. And when we took that through the committee, they gave us a hefty price of how much money we would lose from the budget. So while I totally would be in support of that, I think we have to find ways to supplement that if we were to take that out. As soon as we can find money, I definitely support it. Support that. And just like Delegate Candy King, we have to find a way to make sure that we can still uphold our budget by still rewarding people for the great work that they're doing and the sacrifices they're making as well.
Great. Next, I think we're going to go to Bill Johnson Miles to ask his question. As soon as I find you up here, Bill, I will unmute you. There you go. You can unmute yourself, Bill.
All right, thank you. I'm both a constituent of Josh and Scott. I've been following the stats of COVID-19 in Stafford County, and in the last 3 weeks, 17 people have died from COVID-19. That's like 40%, more than 40% of the total amount of deaths to COVID-19 since March. It looks to me like the numbers are really starting to skyrocket a little bit. Is there anything that can be done to decrease the risk here in Stafford County?
Bill, so this virus has really been good to see you, Bill. This virus has really been a challenge, and there's a lot of reasons why I could talk about what we got here. I actually gave a floor speech on for early days of the Senate session, complaining about some of the how we got here. Didn't make some people happy, but we are where we are, and we have to deal with it now. I saw yesterday the CDC is now suggesting that we actually double mask because of how contagious some of these new strains that are coming over are. We've now had the really contagious strain detected in Virginia, in Northern Virginia. The numbers in England and Ireland have skyrocketed as soon as that new strain started percolating. So first of all, it's important that everybody wear a mask, even after you get vaccinated. All the doctors that I've seen and listened to have said that the only thing they know the vaccine does is it suppresses the symptoms to make sure that you don't get a reaction that puts you in the hospital or kills you, but it does not prevent you from actually getting the virus and then spreading it to other people. And so it's important that you continue to wear a mask and double mask if you can, because it's that's what you have to do to keep everybody safe. So that's number one. Number two, we got to get this vaccine deployed, and it's good to see that Johnson & Johnson has theirs coming. I think there was another one that I read about yesterday that's coming online. Hopefully it'll get approved in the next 3 weeks, but I can just tell you, it's just important to stay at home and take precautions. Is really about all we can do, and we need to make sure we get vaccines in everybody's arms. And the numbers were disappointing for the first few weeks. Things are really starting to ramp up fast now. I'm hopeful the Biden administration and the messaging they're making will cause people to be more safe in their behavior and will stop politicizing this public health problem. So that's really what I can tell you. And by the way, my daughter has a travel soccer game in Richmond in 2 hours, and I'm gonna have to transition to my headset and get in my car, but I'll stay online here. So you're gonna see me disappear for a second and then pop back online, and you only see my face, but not my video. So Josh, Candy, I don't know if you guys want to say anything to that.
Yeah, no, I think it's really key. I've had literally 3 COVID scares where I've been around people or my COVID Wise app has gone off. And I've gotten tested numerous times, and I've just been honored and blessed to not have contracted COVID-19. But it's very, very key that we adhere to the information that's been given us. Wear a mask, stay socially distant. And we just had a member of the Board of Supervisors of Stafford County said, now's the time to open up schools. That's all he said. Okay, well, what's the plan? And the school board members were utterly against what he stated. We have to be very careful. And so I do agree with Senator Surovell. We do need to open up schools soon, but that requires making sure that our teachers have been vaccinated. That has to make sure that we have the proper protection in place for our students to come back. We have to make sure that we're doing everything smart and planning properly to make sure that we can go back. But in the environment that we're in, that's going to be really hard. And so I'm excited to see that our numbers are rising for the vaccine. Mary Washington Healthcare and the Rappahannock Health District are doing some great things. And so I'm excited to see that we're getting the vaccine, both doses out as necessary. And so we really have to make sure in Stafford County, we know that some people are really, really loud and they're talking about their freedoms and they don't want to wear a mask, but we have to make sure that we're remaining vigilant. When you go out, if you have to go out, double mask. Stay away from people as much as possible if you have to go to the store. And hey, get a little loud with it. Back away from me, we just have to make sure that we're protecting each other. And that's the best thing that I can say. Look, our courthouse is shut down. Stafford County government offices are shut down. That should tell you something. We have to make sure we're doing what we can and remaining vigilant in this time.
And I would just add, Bill, one, my heart breaks for every single family that is impacted by COVID-19, especially those who have lost loved ones. And there's been a lot of progress in the vaccination rollout, but what has guided me has really been this proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We have to work together. Elected officials, from the local to the state and the federal, we have to work together to get this right and not just quickly. So to get as many people vaccinated in a safer way as possible, I'm excited to see a lot of the ramping up, but we have people now on the federal side who are committed to getting it right. And unfortunately, that takes a little more time, especially with the storage. But with new vaccines coming online, we have to work together to be vigilant to beat this thing.
Okay, and I saw that, Bill, you also had a question for Delegate Cole about status on a second bridge over the Rappahannock River, if you wanted to address that, Delegate Cole, before we move on.
Yep, and that's one of the great things I think this RTIC that I've been talking about is going to help with the planning and getting the money for. At this state, I don't know what the plans are. I'll have to get with the CTB or see if there's any plans currently in place. But I do know that this is a hefty lift, especially with the problems that we're having in Brook Road as well. But the RTIC, the HB 1910 that I have would significantly help with those costs and the effective.
Great. I'm going to take one from Facebook from Robert Legge. He says, would some of the legislators speak about HB 2303, which would reclassify drug possession from a felony to a misdemeanor?
Of course, that question would come as soon as the lawyer had to jump in the car. But I will say, oh, did someone say something? Oh,
I think I think he's getting around. I think he's getting on and off of mute.
oh, okay. I have actually would need to look at that, which I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, Philip, I didn't hear the question, but
Decriminalizing or changing drug possession, all drug possession from a felony to a misdemeanor. It's HB 2303.
yeah, that bill is pending. I saw it was introduced. I don't think it made it out of the House Crim subcommittee, but whoops. I don't think it made it out of the House Crim subcommittee, but it's something I think we need to look at for future sessions. I don't think it's going to pass this year, but I think it's something we definitely need to look at. You know, the other drugs are much more potent, much more addictive. I think we have to be a little more careful with those. So we'll be looking at that.
Yeah, from the information I'm looking, it looks like it was left in courts. It hasn't made any progress. But this goes back to talking about how addiction is not really a criminal offense, but it's a mental health issue. And we really need to address that, and we really need to make sure that people are getting the help that they need. So I didn't know about the bill, but I'll take a look into it and see what we can do. I know the patron, so I'll chat with her and see what her thoughts are. And if it does move this session, seeing what we can do to work with it.
Great. I'm going to invite Tyler to unmute. He's got a question.
Hey, thank you. I'm wondering if one of you can explain the crossover process and like, do those bills that come over have to wait to be reassigned to those committees, and then like when can we expect everything else to be wrapped up and then wait for the things to be sent to the governor for those that this is my first year in Virginia, so I am so new to this process, and I appreciate you all taking the time.
I can take a crack at that one. I believe crossover is this Friday. And so basically what happens during the crossover process, everything that's in the House and everything in the Senate has to have action taken on, and it has to be sent over and vice versa. Anything that's still left in the House or anything still left in the Senate, let's say a bill is still in committee after Friday, it essentially dies. So nothing happens with it. Once the bills are sent over to the other House, it goes through the exact same process it just went through in its originating House. It has to be assigned to a Senate committee if it's a House bill, or a House committee if it's a Senate bill, and then it begins that process again through subcommittee, through committee, then passage on the House. Once it passes the House or the opposite body, it goes back for final passage. Now, let's say the Senate put some amendments on it, or they put some substitutes on it. We have to go through what's called a committee of conference, where the speaker will assign some delegates to go to it, and I believe the majority leader will assign some conferees to go on it, and they'll duke it out, they'll knock it out, they'll come to a consensus. It'll go for final passage again, then it goes up to the governor. And once it goes up to the governor, he will either sign it into law or he will send it back with his amendments for us to act on. If we haven't adjourned by that time to act on while we're still here, or we'll come back for the reconvene session in 45 days to act on any of the governor's amendments.
And I'll just say that, can you guys hear me okay? I'm now in my car.
Yep, you're good.
Ricky.
Okay. So the other thing I would say is that this year is a little bit funny because the Republicans in the minority refused to extend our session to 46 days, which is something we've done every year since about 1974. And because of that, we're going to have to actually do a special session to complete the regular session. And also because of that, we had to move our crossover date back 3 days to day 25 of the session, which has really jammed us on our ability to do some serious vetting on some bills. Monday through Friday next week are going to really be horrific in committee and on the floor because of the volume of bills we're trying to push through. In the last 48 hours, though, I have been talking with the leadership of the other side to try and figure out if there's a way we can have a normal 28-day crossover to get us another 3 days, but we'll see what happens with that. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but appreciate the question. It's a real fishbowl politics question. I don't think in 11 years anybody's ever asked me to go over the details of crossover. So I appreciate your level of interest in the legislative process. It's impressive that you're paying that close attention.
Okay, great. We have a question from Ginny Meyer. She says that she's a constituent of Delegate King as well as Senator Surovell. She wanted to advocate for one bill and ask you to oppose one bill. HJ 527 from Delegate Bolva creates a study for the sale of invasive plants in the state. And there's also a Senate budget amendment that I know Senator Surovell has signed on to. And there's HB 1727 and I believe SB 1390 is the feral cat bill, which seems dead for this session, but please continue to oppose a release of cats into the wild.
Oh my God, I've just been triggered. So first of all, I want to say I hate English ivy. English ivy was the bane of my existence as a kid, cleaning that crap out of my yard. It takes over, it completely destroys your yard, it kills trees, it kills bushes, it destroys everything, and it doesn't belong in this country. It's like some kind of a virus that the King of England left to ruin our state after we freed ourselves from his tyrannical rule in 1776. So I am all about doing anything we can to get rid of English ivy. Oh my God. So I'm all over that. And then what was feral cats. One of the things you learn after serving is these animal bills can become some of the most, you get more constituent contact out of some of these animal bills than you do out of many other things. And people feel very strongly about their pets. And I noticed, I've knocked 25,000 doors, and when you go out and knock doors, you suddenly realize how many people have dogs because the first person you hear from when you knock at doors is their dog. The cat bill this year has really created a real conflict between the animal welfare community and the birding community. The folks who like and enjoy bird watching feel that trapping and neutering and releasing feral cats basically reduces our bird population because these cats that live in the wild continue to run around and kill birds and eat them and reduce our bird populations, and they don't feel like it's good for the cats. And then the humane society community feels like neutering cats and releasing them in the wild is the humane thing to do. And then there's the whole PETA perspective, and PETA believes that cats that are wild should simply be caught and euthanized. And so it's a really complex issue with a lot of people on all sides of it to tease out. And I didn't realize the bill had been tabled, but it's really challenging to try and figure out how to balance those interests in a way that reaches a consensus in our community, because there's a lot of conflict about it.
I would agree, and I would love, and I can put my email address in the in the chat, but I would love to follow up and discuss, especially how this impacts our district and our community, because that will be, my first point of reference in terms of how I support these things. Although I am there 100% with the invasive species of plants, because now it is my job to clean those things from my house. So I am completely there and would love to talk about the feral cat issue with you. Although I was told on my first day, stay away from animal issues. Don't do it. Don't do it. But I would love to talk about that further.
All right, Elaine, I'm going to invite you to unmute to ask your question. Come through.
Okay. All right. First, let me say it's great to have 3 Democrats representing Stafford County. The Rappahannock Regional Jail has been on COVID lockdown, but if you are arrested and can't put up bond, you will be jailed and exposed. What can be done to protect people who haven't even had their day in court yet?
Yeah, that's a good one that I've been tracking along with the Stafford NAACP and the Spotsylvania NAACP, because the Rappahannock Regional Jail is regional, so it's not just in Stafford County. One thing we did communicate with the Superintendent Hudson, and what he told us was when someone is arrested, they are put on a 10-day isolation before they are released into the general population of the jail. But we do know, like you stated, that there is an outbreak, not just the inmates, those who are there, but also staff are contracting it as well. I received a letter from the jail on yesterday requesting assistance from VDOC, from our Secretary of Public Safety, Secretary Brian Moran, to see what they could do to help out. And so we're going to see what we can do to help out, because like I said, with all of those people being in there together, that's breeding grounds, and we want to make sure that they're helped. We even passed budget language during the special session to allow those who were nearing their release date, who were also nonviolent offenders, to be released early, to make sure that we were making room. And I have to follow up with Department of Corrections to make sure where they were following, because they were moving really slow on those releases. And also for those who were highly susceptible or could possibly die from capturing COVID, we put in budget language to allow them to be released early. So we need to double check on that and make sure that that's being followed as close as possible, because we need to make sure that we have the space necessary.
Yes, I'm sure you read the article in the Freelance Star where a young guy was released to his home before being tested for COVID. And right after he was home, he got a positive result. So he exposed his entire family at home. So we've got to have something in place to protect everybody.
Yeah, Laney, and this isn't a problem just in Stafford. There's been a COVID outbreak in the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center. In fact, there was a Fairfax County deputy who passed away, I believe, about 2 weeks ago. And I feel like our jail populations in a lot of ways get forgot about when these things happen. I appreciate you're looking out for them. I know that at least I've spoken to several of the judges in the Fairfax County Courthouse, and they're much more likely to grant people supervised release than they have ever been, because of the risk that continued incarceration puts people in. I think the use of cash bail in Fairfax, and to a lesser extent Prince William, is a lot less than it is in Stafford. I haven't really spoken to the Stafford judges about it much, but
anyways, I would also just point out that in terms of the future, there's a bill that we just passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday, which eliminates all the presumptions against bond from the code, so that we're just going to leave it up to our magistrates to make bond decisions based purely upon the circumstances of the case and the history of the accused person, and not have language in the code that basically says don't give a bond to all these different categories of people. You know, it's important that our system have that discretion so that we don't have to require every single person to go to a judge to get a bond after 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days once they've been able to finally hire a lawyer because of the specific offense they're charged with. Often the offenses can be relatively minor in the scope of things that can be caught up in those presumptions. So anyways, that won't help anybody till July 1, but at least if this ever happens again, it might give the courts a little more flexibility to adjust.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to John Bernard if you'd like to ask your question as sort of a follow-up and similar topic.
Hi, thanks for putting this on, representative here of Stafford County. So 2 weeks ago, we got emails from the Rappahannock Health District that they'd be handling all of the vaccines, and then more recently, Mary Washington Hospital had 8,000 available, and you had to register. So why isn't the Rappahannock Health District handling the whole thing, going by the wait list?
You know, I'm not as familiar with what you're talking about as I probably should be, but if I know Philip, my chief of staff there, who keeps asking us the questions, he's taking notes. And if you would put your email address in the chat bar, we can direct that question to the Stafford Health District and try and get you an answer for it.
Okay.
I know there's been real problems, you know, with vaccine supply. I mean, Fairfax and Prince William counties had to cancel their vaccinations of teachers, of people that were already scheduled to go, and now they've gotten them back online. Now they've gotten some additional supply in, but there's been some real difficulty with the predictability of supply, which I know has created a lot of confusion and some canceled appointments. It's
great. All right,
pretty
thank you.
scary. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go back to Bill Johnson Miles, who's got one more question. I'm going to invite you to unmute, Bill. There you go.
All right, thanks. Hey, Josh, you and I have talked about this before, but I kind of want to know if there's any status on this or if anybody's thought about this. In about half the states, retired military and active duty military are exempt from state taxes, but not in Virginia. If Virginia truly wants to be a pro-military state, which it claims to be, which it likes to brag about, and if they want to keep experienced, qualified military retirees in the Virginia workforce, you know, the state should think about getting rid of state taxes for these folks. Josh, you know if there's any status on that? You were looking at that.
Yeah, I actually carried the bill last year, HB 243, that would subtract veteran retirement compensation. That's one of the bills I was talking about, that when it went to finance, they talked about the hefty lift of how much money the state would lose. So there was a lot of support behind it. A lot of people wanted to vote for it, but they were just saying at this time, we didn't have other means to supplement that loss in revenue. And it was quite, I don't remember the exact price, but it was well over a couple of millions of dollars that we would lose by doing that. But you know, in the committee, when we were presenting it, they stated, we want to do this. This is something that we're interested in doing. We just have to find a way to supplement that income, the state income first. So the interest is there. We just have to find ways to make sure we're supplementing that income. Hey, we can look at this legalization thing. We can look at a couple of different other things, but the interest is there to do it. We just have to make sure that we have the money to replace it once we do that.
Absolutely. And I would just add, related to that, I've actually introduced a resolution that would be a constitutional amendment to expand the real estate tax relief for spouses, surviving spouses of those who are killed in action. So right now, if you're killed in action, there is a relief, some real estate tax relief. But for those families where you have soldiers who come home and they have health issues and tragically, sadly, may pass away months or years later. Well, it was as a result of their service. So this is to help their families. And, I'm the daughter of a Marine and the wife of a military police. So we have to create a space where we use our revenue when we create new sources of revenue to help those and serve those who have served us. So the interest is definitely there. We just have to find a way to do it without breaking the bank.
All right, if nobody else has comment on that, I think we are pretty much wrapped up with questions from the Zoom and from the Facebook. So if you guys would like to wrap up, or if you guys have anything that you feel like we haven't discussed yet, I'll let you take
Philip, and thanks, Philip. Here, one of the things I think we didn't talk about, which we probably ought to, is the status of redistricting. So I can tell you, we found out last week that the United States Census has advised us that they're not going to be able to give Virginia the data we need in order to redraw our districts until at least July the 30th. That data usually comes in mid-February. So because the data is coming so late, it's basically going to be impossible to redraw Virginia's Senate and delegate districts in time for the November 2021 elections. Normally we redraw them and we do a special session, and then we have the elections in the new district. We have primaries in August and elections in the new districts in November. That's not happening. I'm not sure what's going to happen. We did pass this new constitutional amendment with this commission. The commission is going to draw the maps instead of the legislature, but it's pretty clear that we're going to be running on, or at least the House of Delegates is going to be running under their old lines. And I think there's a distinct possibility that we might end up having House of Delegate elections 3 years in a row. Or in the case of Candy King, she's going to have to run 4 times in 3 years. But in any event, we'll see we'll see what happens with all that. And I'm not sure what the future holds in terms of my district. I have about 4 precincts, I said, in Stafford County, about 20,000 people, and it's been an honor to represent Stafford over the last 5 years. We'll see if the commission decides to leave the 36th Senate District in Stafford. And I have no idea what's going to happen. The legislation we passed actually specifically prohibits us from speaking to the members of the commissions about our districts. So we have no way of determining what's going to happen to our districts until we see the maps like everybody else. So it's going to be a really interesting process, but it's also going to be very important for Stafford, which has been one of the fastest growing counties in Virginia. You all are likely to pick up additional representation than compared with other localities. So, but beyond that, really appreciate the feedback and the comments. We still have a long way to go this session, and we're getting a lot done. I'm really focused on figuring out how we can get our schools open as soon as possible. Closing the schools has been a real struggle for a lot of families, and this COVID thing is holding our economy back. We need to get over this, get through it, and keep people, get as many people vaccinated as soon as possible. That's really been my focus. So if you have any questions, you can always email me. You can actually, we're still meeting with people during session in our Zoom room. So if you'd like to set up a meeting to talk during session, reach out to my staff. Thank you for participating in the town hall today. And I guess I'll turn it over now to Josh.
Thank you so much for everyone joining us. We have so much to do and so little time, in essence. But I'm really honored and excited to represent the 28th House District and our work is still not done. So we have a few more days left in this session. We have some work to keep getting done. If you would like to contact me, my information is right there. You can see all of my information on social media. Don't hesitate to reach out on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. I'll go ahead and put our office email in the chat as well. If you have any questions or any further suggestion about bills that you want to support or that you're against, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I do weekly office hours on Tuesdays. Every Tuesday morning from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. I'm free. You can send us an email to sign up to that if you want to request office hours. Since we're not physically in Richmond like we want to be in our offices during session for you to come down and lobby, we have at least our virtual office hours. So I'll put our contact information over in the chat. Please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you so much for joining us today.
So just to echo, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing your positions and thoughts. I encourage you to visit Candy King for VA on the web, and you'll see my legislative services page. There you can schedule office hours with me. They're every Friday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and we'll put this in the chat as well. Thank you for allowing me to represent the 2nd District. I truly do see this as an opportunity to represent our interest. So it is not about me, it is about all of us. And so please continue to reach out to me via email, set up time to speak. I am here and available to speak with my neighbors and new neighbors because we're all in this together. So thank you so much for coming out this morning.